Oh, it's all up there, right? I'm gonna say good morning. Good morning. Happy Monday. I'm back. I'm back from Chicago. No more chance to graduate. We're excited with that, right? Woo, graduation. Yes. Okay. But I'm excited to say hopefully soon because they said mid-June. And we're past mid-June now, right? We should be waiting any day now on new contracts. But I want us to go through the listing agreement and talk about some really important things in there because everything starts with the listing agreement. Would you guys agree with that? And also, the other reason I want to talk about the listing agreement is the changes they're making from the broker buyer agreement. They're trying to make it match the listing agreement. So right now it doesn't match. The way that the wording is, the way that it goes, the intentions of it are very different than the listing agreement. So I want us to be very clear about how the listing agreement is worded, how it flows, all of that, because the new broker buyer agreement will follow very much in suit to the listing agreement. Okay, so the more we go through the listing agreement, the more we understand the way it flows, the more that is how the broker buyer agreement will flow as well. Because right now they are not the same. They're different in the way that they work. Okay, everybody good with that? So that is the other reason that I chose to work on the listing agreement today. And I want us to make sure, Andrea, come on over, everybody, that everybody is very clear about a couple other things. I'm hoping that when they revise the listing agreement, I know certain languages will be put in there. Every contract will have that all the commission is negotiable. That's going to be added into everything. That much I know. But I'm hoping that they will also maybe be adding some new sections about what to look for as to be included. If not, I'm thinking I may come up with a list that you will bring with you on a listing agreement so that you will be jogged into asking if these things will convey. Because what happens is we get into a situation and here we are towards the closing and we have items that we have not discussed. Are they conveying? And they're blowing up our closing. Do you guys agree? This is how often does this happen? And usually they're stupid things, ring doorbells and ridiculous things that are not really in the contract. Is a ring doorbell in a contract? No. Is a Nest thermostat in the doorbell, in the contract. A thermostat is, but it doesn't say a Nest. So is that really, these are the problems. Like we have to really, address things differently. For example, security systems and the systems that make smart homes. They're not in the contract. There's so many things today that we've added into our homes to make them unique and special. They're just not in the contracts. And like our fave of late, solar panels, gotta love them. Hey, Ariana, she's there. So these are the things we have to learn to remember to ask, right? So I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. Would you guys agree to have a checklist so that we can be jogging our memory? Because, you're in the moment, you're having a conversation. Because I don't like to think of it as a listing consultation. I like to think of it more as a listing conversation. You're making a friend, you're making people feel comfortable. And sometimes when you're in the moment, you might forget too, because guess what? We're all human. And that's unfortunately where error lies, in the human nature, right? Because we're not robots. But unfortunately, because in the state of Florida, we're not an attorney state, so we don't just give everything over to attorneys and let them do all the paperwork. We do it. We then are held to higher standards. And then what happens is we get gray contracts. And then what happens is ugly mess. Would y'all agree with that? So this is an effort to kind of hopefully alleviate some of that mess. So you guys stop me at any point, as I know you will. I know they have stupid things like intercom systems and things like, smart home systems are not in there. The problem is attorneys. Tesla chargers. Thank you very much. There's another great one. You know what? I am charging each one of you with to send me those things. Everybody send me those items that you think about so we can all compile the list to make that list that we can add as a little addenda that you can go through as a checklist. And we'll make an addenda that goes with the listing agreement. You can say is included as being conveyed or not being conveyed. You like it? So everybody send me the list of the craziest things that you've seen included in the house or not included in the house or has blown up your closing. Just send it to me. We will compile an addenda for you that you will do as a checklist that you can just bring along and have them sign to say you would check it, is being conveyed or not being conveyed. And then you'll have some blank lines or negotiable. And then you can have blank lines to write in the crazier ones that we have not yet seen, because there will be those too. Right? Because every day we know there will always be something new, right? I mean, listen, storm shutters is on there, but we live in Central Florida. How many people have storm shutters here? Hardly anybody. These contracts that are written here, they're written for the entire state of Florida, right? But you're so right. Tesla chargers, but I have charging things that have been put in. Do I want to give that? No. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to think about these things. Everybody has now solar cars. What about if you have like the big battery that's been attached to your house from Tesla? How much does that thing cost? You might want to take that to your home. The contract does not have that in there. That is an excellent point, right? What is that? 20 grand, 25 grand? It's really expensive from Tesla, that battery thing that gets charged to your home. So these are all things that we need to think about. And I'm going to tell you, if it's not in the contract, is it coming? It's not coming. That's the problem. But if it costs money for the seller to remove it, what do we have? Gray. We have a heck of a lot of gray.
It's really good to buyers too, so they know.
Yes.
Sometimes we don't know.
And guys, from that list, you could make a list of what's being conveyed and upload that in supplemental information. When you get the contract, you look to make sure the things that are not being conveyed are on the do not convey, right? On the contract, because if it's not there as do not convey, guess what it's doing? It's conveying, whether you said it wasn't going to convey on your listing agreement or not. That's where we as listing agents get in trouble, right? Because they told us they didn't want it to convey, but it doesn't matter. What happens is whatever's in the contract, that's where the negotiation happens. Right? How many
Sharon,
times-
are you talking about the Powerwall, the Tesla Powerwall?
Yes, that's
But that's
not
like incorporated into the house though.
is it? If it's removed, does it destroy anything?
I mean, it's like having a whole house generator without, and then taking it with you. I don't know.
Yeah. But if you remove it, does it destroy the house? Yeah, a generator is another thing. What is truly a fixture, guys? A fixture has 3 different definitions. However, what in real estate has come to be the actual definition is if you remove it and it actually destroys something like your molding or your sheetrock, or that is what they're considering to be a fixture. So if you remove that, is it destroying something? Does it, Jane? I don't think it does.
No. I mean, a Tesla charger for a car is minuscule. That's only like 450 bucks.
Right. But the whole house generator, I know what you're saying. It's expensive. They're using for the house. But if you remove that, it's really not destroying the house. So, but if you didn't write, it's just like if you buy a home that's a smart home, right? But you didn't write in the main brain of that. The main brain is what costs the most. If you didn't write it in the contract, how do you know it comes? You don't. This is my point. This is where contracts are gray. Everybody with me?
And for sellers, I would put a wordage in the bottom that whatever's in the house, that's what's gonna convey, because I've had sellers switch out the washer and dryer on me.
Well, in the contracts today, they did add the words that is in the home at the time that they view and write the contract. They have added that in there, but still, all in all, I would be adding it in your contract, because if you go into a home and they have the refrigerator that has the cappuccino machine in it, I mean, that's a nice refrigerator.
Some don't read the contract, they do read however they done.
But regardless, I would put it in there because what if also in the garage, they had another refrigerator, you know, it just could get ugly. I'm just saying, could you fight that? Yes, but then what are we doing, guys? We're getting stuck in litigation. This is the problem. All of these things that were like, well, it was in the contract. Who enforces that, guys? We can't enforce it as brokers. We can't. Okay, we can talk about it, we can fight about it, but at the end of the day, we brokers cannot enforce it. It has to be enforced through attorneys. This is where it gets ugly. There is a line, it's funny, I was talking to my son's girlfriend who just is now an attorney, she's passing the bar, just graduated from Harvard Law, so I'm going to defer to her. And she was asking me, because one of her classes was real estate contracts and law, what I can teach. She's like, oh, you teach contract law. I'm like, oh God, am I in trouble here? And she tested me on a bunch of things, but one of the things they teach is what a broker is allowed to teach and talk about and do in contracts and what they cannot. So it is very true. We can talk about contracts, but we can't interpret contracts. We cannot enforce contracts because we are not attorneys. Right? Like writing an addenda. I can be a scribe and write what buyers and sellers say, but I can't write legalese. I cannot write a contract because that would be performing what an attorney does, which is, by the way, a third-degree felony. And I don't look good in orange or stripes, so I'm not doing it. This is the point. So when you come to me, you're like, Carrie, can you enforce that? No, I cannot. I'm a broker, but I'm not an attorney. Damn, I missed my calling. I should have been, but I'm not. So this is the point, guys. That's why we all have to be very, very clear as to what is in the contract and what, more importantly, is not, right? Sometimes it's more important about what's not in the contract than what is in the contract. So let's take a look at the listing, shall we? Because it all starts, I would tell you there. All right. We're going to take a peek. You guys can all see my screen, I'm sure. Yes? But that's the one we're going to look at. We're going to look at this one.
Their migraine medicine that association went away. So look, what's in your control? You obviously have no control over the temperature, but you can control some of those triggers. You want to limit sun exposure, stay hydrated. Everyone has their food triggers, chocolate, things like that, and keep a sleep schedule.
Okay, I don't know who has chocolate triggers, but all right. Thank God I don't. And I could drink wine too, but I have migraines, but I am not triggered by those beautiful, wonderful things. I am triggered by perfume and horrible like storms. Okay, so let's take a peek. We're going to go into the exclusive resale listing agreement. And we're going to look at a couple different listing agreements too, guys, because they're a little different when we look at land and things. Okay, let's look at exclusive resale listing agreement. Did I pass it in the middle?
Listing folder residential.
You know, I'm the one who does this. You think I would know that? There it is. Okay. Okay, there it is. Exclusive resale listing agreement. There we go, guys. Okay. All right. Now, again, you guys know that there will be changes to this, but I think they will be pretty minor.
This is, again,
I know who needs to mute here. Somebody needs to mute. Can everybody mute if you're not talking? Thanks. Okay, so the seller, obviously we know who that is, but the broker, guys, that is not my name. That is not your name. Can we all remember to put Premier Sotheby's there? Because, by the way, if you wrote your name or my name there and they want to get out, you've given them an out.
planetary diet. Okay. This term was coined in 2019, and this is basically like
Who the heck is this person?
basically what's good for you is also good for the planet. So what they found, this planetary diet.
Who's got the planetary diet going on here? I don't know, but is it Jules? Okay, so there we go. So, all right, then let's look at this. Remember, the other thing that there's still some talk about is clear cooperation. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with clear cooperation. The lawsuit doesn't actually talk about clear cooperation, but do we think that there could be some changes to clear cooperation? I do. Okay, so it's funny because Mary Jo, who's the CEO of Stellar, which I was just actually there on Friday with Stellar because yay, Aura. It's Jeff Fagan from Aura is now the president of Stellar. Thank you very much. Whoop. And my friend Mary is now on the executive board, so Laura's taken over, but we need to have strong people in position, so this is a good thing. But at any rate, the point is, she had said when this first came out, this is not going to affect clear cooperation. Clear cooperation still stands. They're really strong about clear cooperation. We all know what clear cooperation is, correct? I do not need to state what clear cooperation is. I will state it anyway, just for the record. Clear cooperation means you cannot have your home marketed unless it's marketed to the public. Meaning that if you have a listing, it must be on the MLS within 5 business days, not calendar days. And if you start to market it, within that period, it has 1 business day, right? We all know that. However, we all know that we, Premier Sotheby's, did not like that. So we came up with our own little thing, which was approved by Stellar MLS and written by an attorney that says seller and broker hereby acknowledge and agree. All terms, covenants, and conditions contained in the listing agreement shall be and remain in full force and effect as the date it's signed and received. Meaning that's why you guys sign it first, then send it for signatures, because they can download it. If they don't download it, we don't care. That's them signing and receiving it. Now it's effective. If you don't sign it first, guys, it's not effective. You guys know that, right? I don't have to sign this. I will sign it because I want you guys to know I've signed it. The only part I really have to, because it says and or. I've given you the authority to sign this. The only thing that I really have to sign is the arbitration. And that's not that big of a deal. It's still an effective agreement without that. But the important part for this to be accurate and to be in effect is that you must sign this first before you send it for signatures. Or if you're doing wet signatures, you all sign it at the same time and give them a copy because it has to be delivered. If you sign it and don't give them a copy, it's not delivered, right? You sign it at the table and you don't give them a copy, it's not delivered. So the whole point is, if you want to have an effective agreement to get around clear cooperation, it has to be signed and delivered by all parties. And you can be Premier Sotheby's. Are we all in this understanding of that? That is imperative. If you just sent it them signatures and you didn't sign it and send it back to them, we really don't have an effective agreement, which means you're really in violation of clear cooperation, just so you're aware of that. I'm not going to say I've never seen any of that. Okay, which is why when I do, I sign it quickly and say, send this immediately. Because even though I signed it, if it's not sent, is it delivered? No, for a contract to be effective, it has to be signed and delivered. So I could sign it in your stead, but it has to be delivered. And I'm never going to deliver to your customer without you doing it. Because again, I don't ever want to overstep for you. Because I want your customer to know they go to you. Right? There's a chain of command, guys, and I don't want your customer to think they could go around you. That's never a good thing for you. So I'm never going to do that to you. And if your customer wants to talk to me, they can talk to you and then talk to me together. Because I don't want them to think that they can go around you. That is not good. It's not that I'm not willing to help you. That's not helping you. That's not good for you. Trust me. Helping you is us talking to them together so they know we're a united force. Not that you're going to go tattletale on you. Because that's what they do when they call you without you. You know that, right? They want to tell me all the bad stuff about you, which is ridiculous because then I tell them they're wrong and blah, 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 blah. But I don't ever do that because I don't take their call, just so you know. That's why I don't. Okay. So we all understand this, right? This is imperative. You understand this because as things change and move forward, we're going to continue with this. Where clear cooperation will go, I don't know. Department of Justice is continuing with this lawsuit. They're allowed to continue. I think in truth. So for example, part of our settlement with Anywhere states that our particular brokerages have the right and the choice if they'd like to be part of the National Association of Realtors, they can or cannot. We can choose. Now, most of them want to be part because they like what? Code of ethics, most of all. Right? We like the idea of a code of ethics that everybody has to follow. And if you're not part of that, that's a scary thought. Come on, join us. So I don't know how many people will drop, but smaller brokerages that don't understand code of ethics, well, heck, probably don't follow them anyway, right? You may see people fall out. And I have not seen those numbers yet. I will tell you, I've talked to many, and I'm looking forward to being at Florida Realtors in August to hear from more people from throughout Florida. But I have talked to several already at different board of directors meetings and heard, we have not seen anybody drop yet. We've not seen the numbers even drop their Stellar, which I'm shocked because when Stellar did their renewal, I thought for sure we'd see people drop. We have not seen people drop.
Wait, you
So
can-
disappointing.
The broker can still be part of Stellar without being part of the food packet?
Some associations and some no. We can hear because in the state of Florida in the 1980s, there was a lawsuit that said, because they used to say you could not be part of Stellar without being part of a board. You had to be part of a board, which if you're a local board, then you're part of a Florida board, and then you're part of the national board. And they sued and said, that's not fair. And they won. Another lawsuit, super fun. And that brought about what's called a Thompson brokerage. So you could be part of what's called a Thompson brokerage, not be part of any association and still be part of Stellar. That's here in the state of Florida. So we've had that here since 1980s. But not every association has that. There are other states that have the rule that you cannot be part of their MLS and not be part of an association. But in Florida, you can be part of, because of the lawsuit. Super fun. Yes,
Your calculation, because I've done it recently. I always get them to sign the delay of entry waiver.
yeah,
and
you
I
can
just
do that.
submit that right away.
I hate that.
and then-
Please don't do it.
Okay, so with this cover, like if I know I'm not going live in the next 5 days.
Yeah, so what you do, thank you for asking, Lisa. Great question.
Can
What
you
I wanna-
repeat that?
Yes, so she asked, she used to use the waiver. I hate the waivers because the waivers are an administrative nightmare for us. We have to send them, then we have to do them again, and then they expire, and then,
Why do
And
you
there's-
almost-
but there's really no much benefit. I will tell you, there's one time you want to use a waiver. What you want to do, because this is also what we use for private placement. With us, we love private placement because it gives you the opportunity to test the price. It gives you an opportunity to take a listing to say, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you think it's worth 1.5, we think maybe 1.2, but guess what? We can try your 1.5 in our private placement. We can do some private broker opens. We can really see what the realtors think. We can get some opinions of value and then really kind of tighten up what we think it should be when we start the MLS. They love that. We get the listing, we've tried it out, we've got some opinions of value, and by the time we hit the MLS, we have a good price. The seller feels good about it, we feel good about it, and we don't look like an idiot hitting the MLS at 1.5 and then dropping it to 1.2. By the way, that never looks good for the seller, right? Doesn't look good. So private placement. How do we do that? When you take this date here, you post date it out. 6 months, go right ahead. 2 months, go right ahead. 3 weeks, go right ahead. Never put the date that you're taking the listing here. This can be post dated because of the verbiage on the back. Now, this date should be 6 months, a year. The minimum ever is 4 months. Minimum ever 4 months. And that's only because of corporate relocation. It takes us a long time to get all of our marketing out there, guys. What we don't want to do is do all this marketing and then it's off the market and the next person who starts to sell it sells it because of our marketing. That's why we don't take less than 4 month listings. We really want 6 month listings. I would say go with 6 months and tell them at 4 months, we'll have a review. And if it doesn't work at 4 months, we'll just TOM it or whatever. We'll review it at 4 months. Listen,
Carrie.
yes.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to your signing the contract.
Yeah.
I always sign it and send it to my customer, but you're saying I sign it, send it to them, and then after you sign it, I send it to them again?
No.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
worry about me. You are 100% right, Marima.
Okay.
You're good, my friend. Excellent job. Now, I will sign it later, and then we upload it with me signed it. I sign it more for you guys to know that I signed it, and I sign it because I check every one of them. The problem is when I sign it, you've already done it. I like when you guys have a question, you ask me before you do it, right? That's like the best case scenario. But yeah, but I feel pretty good on listings that you guys know what you're doing. So, but if you don't, please ask me. I'm going to tell you this. Sometimes I joke and I am a jokester. You guys know that. But when it comes to contracts, That could be listings, that could be purchase. I don't care what contract it is. There are no stupid questions. I don't care if you've asked me the question 5 times, even 50. Ask me again. When it comes to contracts, we have to get it right. And heck, I don't know it all, for sure. Poor Phil. He's on my speed dial. And he always answers. I love Phil. Phil is like the best. And then when Phil needs something for his nephew, he needed numbers, I get them for him. Like whatever, like we're good friends. Phil's the best.
I have a question.
Yeah.
One, when you put C attachment, do you just put that and then put the name, the attachment, whatever name you give it? Or like.
Where are you talking about? Oh, this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's legal description. I mean, you wouldn't need legal description, see attachment.
Personal property including appliances.
Oh, yeah, you would do that, see attachment, if you have a long list of things that's being attached. So I wouldn't do it here. I would do an addendum. I would probably put under additional terms, see addenda here of things being conveyed. I would probably put it here under additional terms and then have it. Yeah.
And the other thing is price. So very
Mhm.
often as you send a listing agreement, we have not determined the price yet. Is it a valid contract?
No. The question was, I won't say who asked it. Someone said that they signed contracts without having a price. And they asked, is it a valid contract? And the answer to that is no, it is not a valid contract. This is not a listing contract without a price. You have to have a price. Here's the beauty, guys. If you post-dated it, you could start with the price and then change the price. But you do not have a valid contract without a price.
So-
Just like on a purchase and sale contract, you do not have a valid contract without a deposit, even if it's VA, right? And we cannot take cows. I'm sorry, no cows. So you have to actually have a deposit, no matter if it's a 0% financing. And in a listing agreement, you have to actually have a price. These are like non-negotiables. Okay?
So we just put like what the highest price that they want and then change it, and do
Yeah.
you have to do an addendum, or can you just cross it
You
over
could just
it?
cross it out and then have everybody initial.
So we just say, okay, we're gonna put this for starters, we're going to test, after everything,
Yep,
and we'll just change it in the contract.
absolutely. I would prefer you to cross it out here and then have every initial, then do a listing, a modification, because then they think they can modify other things. Let's not give them that idea. Let's not even go there. Everybody good with that? Yeah. The other thing I want you to be very aware of in a contract, which is a purchase and sale, the other non-negotiable is a closing date. What I mean by that is it must be specific. That's why we don't write honor before, in case there's any of those frequent flyers in this class here today. You cannot write honor before into your listing, into your purchase and sale agreement. If the attorneys wanted it there, they would have written it. When you write it, you invalidate your contract. Super fun. Please don't do that. Not that anybody in this room would have done that, but just in case.
I've told several realtors that come with buyers that read that, I'm like, we don't wanna do that, we don't accept that, they're like, oh, but my brokerage does, I wanna do it this way. Yeah.
Tell them to call the legal hotline and get back to you. I would love them to call the legal hotline.
Less than.
It was done a lot in Missouri.
Oh, super fun. Yeah, honor before, if you don't have an actual physical closing date, you don't have a contract. Just like if you don't have a price, you don't have a contract. Because people need to know, when is it closing? It can't be like, maybe it'll close one day. Like they have to know when it's closing. That's the whole point. Just like, maybe it'll have a price. It's just like you can't write a range for commission. It might be this, or it might be that. No. There's certain things that have to be specific. And date is one of them. Price is one of them. Commission is another. So are things that are being conveyed. Although you can say certain things could be negotiable, that's okay. But not like the roof. Okay, that has to be conveyed, right? Everybody good with that? All right. So personal property. See, this doesn't tell us anything. So that's why we're going to go ahead and come up with that list. Everybody's going to send me all the things that we've ever had your deals fall apart on. And we're going to have an addenda that's going to go with it. You like that? Can we talk about occupancy, guys? This has been a little bit of a thing here. Occupancy, post-occupancy, pre-occupancy. What we need to understand with post and pre-occupancy is there has to be a written agreement in place if there's going to be a post or pre-occupancy. Now, the addendas that come with the contracts now are pretty good. And so if it's only a couple days or a week, you can actually use the post or pre-occupancy agreements that are addendas that are now in the contract to go with that. Those could suffice as your agreement. But if it's going to be a couple months, those are not good enough. Okay, they're not good enough. We have to talk about like renters insurance. Are they getting renters insurance? Like what happens to their belongings if something happens? Like there's certain things that you need to think through that agreement does not go into. All right.
60 days. Max.
I mean, can I tell you exactly where the max lies? You have to think about what that doesn't include. And you can write into there, but you might want an attorney to add the language. So you can add on to there, but we might need an addenda, but it depends on how convoluted it gets and how expensive it is. If you're talking about they're paying rent of $12,000 a month, you might want an attorney to write that, right? If they're paying nothing, you might be okay. So it just depends on the situation. But talk to me about that because I hate them and I'll try to talk you out of it. Okay, good. Yes.
So if you are representing buyer and the seller has this, is it okay for the buyer to see the current lease that's being held on that property?
Okay, so let me ask you what you're saying. So you're saying the seller, it has a tenant in place?
Long-term tenant.
They have to give it to you within 5 days of the contract. And then the buyer has 5 days to either accept it or get out of the contract.
What document are we talking about?
Okay, so
So what Ariana asked is if the seller has a long-term tenant, so they've checked here, is currently occupied by a tenant and the lease expires beyond the closing date, right? Like say expires in a year and a half or something, right? Or a year, let's say expires in a year. So what you have to do is you have to get a copy of that lease right away. And then as soon as you go into contract, you must give the lease to the buyer. The buyer has 5 days, you have to do that within 5 days of contract. Now that buyer has 5 days to accept that lease. If they don't feel comfortable with that lease, they can put in writing, which has to be an email or a letter, snail mail, that they don't feel comfortable, they can cancel the contract. That is an actual contingency and get their money back for any reason. It's another contingency.
For my buyers that are investors,
Mhm.
I send in no inspection, nobody sends me the contract on the 5th day.
And then you can cancel. Yeah. Well, see, that's a very smart, astute woman. You have to make sure you make it subject to the lease though in the contract. Of course, yeah. But that's absolutely true because if somebody doesn't send it to you within 5 days, then they're already in default of contract.
How do they accept it? Is that an email?
No, they can either just not respond and that's an exception. They basically waive the contingency by not responding, or they could say, we're good. I
But
mean,
doesn't
either
say
way.
by when you have to respond.
Yes, it does, 5 days.
So by 5 days, you have to have it and respond, no. yes
Or
no.
if you don't respond, you're waiving your contingency. So it's 5 days to send the lease,
and then
5 days to agree, or you don't, or you waive your contingency.
so technically 10 days.
It's a 10-day period, exactly. Everybody good with that? But it may not be 10 days, because if they give you the lease in the first day,
Then-
you only have 5 days, so it's 6 days, right? So the longest it could be is 5 days. Yeah, you have a free 5-day contingency if it's subject to a lease. But in the contract, it has to be checked subject to a lease. Nothing in the contract, thank you for asking that question. Nothing in our contracts is business days. All contracts written by the Florida Bar Association are calendar days, everything.
And that's, where is it?
It's under time. In the as is and in the residential. Everything is calendar day. But if it lands on a holiday or a weekend, it will go to the next business day. So that's where people get confused. And nothing ends at 5 o'clock anymore, which is stupid. It goes to 11:59 PM. She was retarded.
And where do they take contingent on the lease.
It's subject to the lease. It's an actual check mark after the financing contingency period. There's a whole. Yeah, I think it's number 5 or 6. Mhm.
I have one more question.
Yes.
So as I'm going through all this and all these, so does each time that one of our contingencies comes up, is there an addendum required for that then? Or is it okay if the date passes, we assume that then that contingency is removed?
If you don't need an addenda to remove a contingency. So great question. You would need an addenda usually for some contingencies, but subject to a lease, you're checking that. What you need with that is actually the lease, right? But some contingencies will require addendas, some will not. So it depends on what it is, but you'd never need anything in writing that will waive a contingency. The contract itself does that for you.
So like, we don't do that, and then we don't need like inspection contingency.
No.
And then the finance.
Because it's all written into the contract already, right? But
Mary, who's,
yes,
sorry, who's checking the, subject to lease? Is it the buyer or the seller? The seller in the
well, no,
contract?
see,
It would be the buyer.
remember, you would have to know here it's subject to it, you know, when you take this, and you, if you're the listing agent, would have to get that lease, right? And then when you're putting into the listing, you'd have to say it's subject to a lease. That's
Okay.
all have to go into the listing. Now, when you get that contract, you don't need to make sure you're checking that it's subject to a lease, because that's but you have to send them
Right.
the lease. If they didn't check subject to a lease, I wouldn't go back and say you forgot to check this box, because why would you want to say, here's your contingency, don't forget it? But you can still give them the lease, because you want to make sure that they know what that lease is. You're doing your part, but you don't have to help the agent on the other side to make sure you give them a contingency. So what that means is they didn't check subject to a lease because they're a terrible agent. Surprise, there's like a lot of them out there, right? But you still sent them the lease because they need to see this. They go back to you and they say, oh, we don't feel comfortable. Well, they don't have a contingency because they didn't check it. But if you used an as-is contract, they're still in the as-is period, they can still cancel. Because it's canceled for any reason, right? But at the same token, I would tell you, you need to do your job and send them that contract.
Does the contract say about the deposit that it does go from the seller to the buyer? Because if the tenant has $3,000 in deposit, I've seen sellers go like, no, that's my money. I'm like, no, it's not, it's a deposit, but.
When it says subject to a lease, that's in the lease. So that's, the lease will say who's holding the money and who does it go to. That's in the lease.
Because essentially it belongs to the tenant, not to the.
Exactly.
seller.
So that's going to be in the lease, and that's why the buyer has to accept that lease. But here's the really important part, guys. You guys have to understand, subject to a lease, very important. If you did not have anything to do with that lease, do not take ownership of that lease. This is the number one thing I see you guys do wrong. You take ownership of everything. You do. God love you. Please don't do that. You were not party to that agreement. Okay, they want you to cancel the agreement. Oh, I've seen that. That's really fun. I don't even want to tell you who tried to do that. Carrie, I'm gonna send an eviction. Oh, hell no, you're not. First of all, we don't do property management. Second of all, you are not party to that lease. You are not going to do any of those things. You don't know anything about timing. You don't know anything about notice. And I'm not going to have Sotheby's involved with your lawsuit. So no, thank you. You're not going to be doing that. We do not do that. Okay. That is the contract is between the landlord and the tenant. We are not the landlord and we are not the tenant. Are we? No. And even if you assisted in that lease, you can give a little guidance, but you're still not the landlord or the tenant, are you?
You still going to pay the tenant. Nobody believes when you pay them.
You can, but you don't talk to the tenant,
No.
right? And this is the other thing. When you take a listing, by the way, where they're subject to a lease, I love how the seller wants you to handle everything with the tenant. It's not your tenant. It's their tenant. You could try to assist and work with that tenant, but if it's a difficult tenant, it's not up to you to do that. It is up to them because they're the ones who are in the contract with them, not you. You have to go back to the seller and say they need to work it out with their tenant, not you. It is not your job because you're not in that contract. Yes.
We also have to make sure that the lease is assignable.
It's always assignable. I've never seen a lease I've never seen a lease not assignable. Never. I mean, that would be really weird. I can't imagine any lease not be assignable.
Carrie?
Yeah.
Along that line, can people take a listing agreement for a property that is leased and then the tenant will not allow it to be shown? How can that still be an active listing, or can it?
It cannot. If the tenant is being difficult, oh, surprise. You cannot continue letting it be active. If you can't show a property for 48 hours, you have to TOM it. That is an MLS rule. Otherwise, you are in violation of MLS. So, for example, you would have to set up a showing schedule that at least has to be shown every 48 hours. And if they will not agree to that, you can't take that listing, or you have to TOM it.
So you can add like, oh, contact tenant for showings.
Contact tenant for showings to the,
I've seen that a lot. I've never done it, but I've seen it.
no, I don't think that's a great idea. Contact tenant for showings?
She's saying
Yeah.
for the buyer.
I have
showing time. Because
What
they
do you
live
do?
there.
Yeah, because they
Yeah,
live
yeah,
there,
yeah.
so when I have a buyer.
Directly to them.
It's showing time that just, they don't talk to them, it just sends a request to me.
I mean, I'm not gonna say you can't do that. I hate the subject to lease anyway, but whatever. I'm not gonna say you can't do that, but let's say they keep denying. If you cannot be shown, you must TOM it.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna start getting violations. People are gonna start putting it in as a violation. And that is a violation against you, by the way, not me. Yeah.
How can you do with vacation homes, but because sometimes they're vacant, sometimes not, and you're never.
I know vacation homes are difficult. Absolutely. We have had that as a situation. We try to make them available, but there are certain rules. Caroline, what are the rules with vacation homes? There was something with virtual showings with vacation homes. I'll find that out for you with Caroline. We'll get that from her. Okay, we'll go back to that. We'll give you on. All right, because I don't want to run out of time here. All right. Now, guys, something that you have to understand, cash, conventional, VA, FHA, other, when you're asking the seller what they'll accept, right? You have to also understand if it's the right price point. If you have $1 million property, cannot be FHA because that loan amount doesn't go up there, right? But could $1 million be VA? Absolutely. I've done $1.5 million up to VA. I don't know what the limit of VA is. It might go to 2 million. I was going to say, I think it just went up because I think it used to be 1.75, wasn't it? So it just went up to 2 million. 2 million. Oh, I love the VA. Love it. So these are things you got to keep hold of and know that before you ask. Okay. Now, seller financing. If you're going to talk about seller financing, please understand the seller financing, and you need to use the addendas that are in the system. So if you're going to talk about seller financing, have those addendas printed out before you talk about seller financing. They are in the system, seller financing. Also assumable. If they have a really low mortgage, you can make it assumable if it's FHA or VA, because they can do that if they get qualified. The VAs are the tougher ones. The FHAs are the tougher ones, not the VAs, excuse me, because it's hard to get the second. Because they won't have the money for the second. A VA would probably. The FHA probably won't have the money for the second because they probably didn't have the money for the first. So the problem is to get somebody to subordinate to it is the problem, right? Because the FHA one will be the first. You need to get the second to make up the rest of the money because they probably don't have it for the whole amount, right? If it's a good interest rate. So that loan that's going to make up the difference has to be in second position. And a lot of lenders don't like that. So it is hard to get the assumable on the FHA, but it's worth a try. You could do it. But the VA, I've seen more assumables on the VA. So just so you know, you can still do that. And there is an addenda for the assumable. Okay? Everybody good? Do not make these addendas up yourself. Don't do it. Get a lender to help you. Maria's happy to do it until we have, hopefully she'll be with Select Lending too. But we have addendas though. You need to use our addendas that the Florida Bar Association has written. Okay? Everybody good with that? Now, interesting. I never talk about this section, but I'm talking about it now because we know with the changes in the MLS, This may come to pass. Seller will pay mortgage discount or other closing costs not to exceed this percentage. So considering that they're going to be changing and taking out the compensation, they may start saying, okay, instead we'll pay a percentage for closing costs, or we may pay buyers. This may be where we start adding that. This is something that we're not doing yet, but I'm just bringing to your attention. This may be a position, a part that we may start using. Everybody understand where I'm coming with this? So they will be adding fields in the MLS, but I don't know what it looks like yet because, you know, it's yet to happen. And this is August, I think 15th, the date that that's supposedly going to happen now. But instead of compensation, they're going to be allowing buyers, what are they calling it? Buyers, God, I can't think of the word, you know, like kind of rebates or buyer incentives or buyers compensation, something like that. There's a word, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But anyway.
Concessions.
Concessions, that's the word. Thank you, Walter. I love that. I couldn't think of that word, buyer concessions. So that will be in the MLS. I don't know if it'll be broken down into different parts or how that'll look, but we may be using this here for buyer concessions. Because think about it, if the buyer is going to pay our commission and the seller gives the buyer to closing costs or what have you, right? It's the same thing. It just washes out a little different, right? The seller pays the buyer pays us. Same thing, isn't it? Just washes a little different, but it's the same money. Just who's getting it from where? It's just the P game, right? So that may be something we use, or maybe in the listing agreement, they change it a little bit, but that may be a box we start using. Everybody clear with that? All right, this whole stuff about the multiple listing and the fact, I think that what you'll notice, this will probably stay the same. That's all about clear cooperation. All that's saying is that we can't market your property unless we market to everybody. So it has to be on the MLS. That's all that's about. Now, let's talk about this really. Again, this is a public marketing. What is public marketing? A flyer, is that public marketing? Yes. A text message with photos, is that public marketing? What? Exactly. We can share it with anybody in our company. But if you send it to somebody in another company, that is considered public marketing. Your mom is fine. Because she's not an agent, right?
Yeah.
So we can share it with our customers. We're allowed to share it with our customers, which is why, back to your waiver, we can sell properties that are in private placement. That's when you use the waiver.
Can I send it to all the neighbors?
You can't send it
They-
because that's public marketing.
They could share it.
But you
They're
could
my-
talk to
like,
them.
Farm the neighborhood, like they're my customers.
But you're farming it, you're sending it. If you're sending it, it's public marketing.
But it can
But
send
if
to
you're
one neighbor
talking,
that-
yeah, if you're
They can
talking,
share it to everyone else.
yeah, it doesn't matter, they did it. But if you're talking to them, that's fine. See, it's public marketing, a flyer, you're sending it, that's public marketing. If you're talking to your neighbor, you're sharing your neighbor a picture, you're texting it to your neighbor, then your neighbor happens to do that, that's fine. I wouldn't put it on social media, that's public marketing. Any public facing thing is public marketing, yeah.
South Americans and Europeans use a lot of WhatsApp. And
yeah.
they're huge groups with like 30 neighbors and no agents. It's a private group.
So
Instead of
if you sent it to your customer singularly and your customer did that, you'd be fine.
okay.
If you put it in there, it could be misconstrued, because what if there was an agent in it? Listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, agents do this all the time and never get caught, but it's gonna be our luck if we do it, we're gonna get caught because we're Sotheby's. This is the problem.
The seller could do it, right?
Of course the seller
They
could,
can send it to the seller and the
Sure.
seller posts it
all
on
day
the
long,
page.
because the seller is not an agent.
I had a seller, she had a yard sale and we were gonna list her house. We hadn't. She made her own flyer and handed it out at her yard sale and pinned it up in her community center with my picture and name on it.
but that is scary.
So I got her on the MLS the next day.
Yeah,
Because I was like.
that is still a flyer. So it doesn't matter that she did it, it's a flyer. That's what made it bad, because it was a flyer.
So a private.
So is the, dir-
You and your
is-
buyer is good.
Yeah, the private conversation between you and your buyer is fine, yes.
so the directions that we give our sellers, look, if you want to chat about this with family and friends, that's great. Don't put it on your social media, don't make up a flyer. But
Right,
if you want to share a text with your cousin and
Sure.
tell her, come on down, you can do that.
absolutely. We
Okay.
just, public marketing, flyers are big fat no-nos, right? They could text somebody, they can talk to somebody, that's not, they can share a picture with somebody. But if you put out a flyer, think about what is known as public. If somebody you don't know sees something hanging there, and especially with your face on it, that is bad. Because who's to say your seller did it or you did it, right? I mean, that's where public marketing comes in. Now, if you are not violating, right? But let's say you talk to your friend, neighbor, whoever, and they want to buy the house. You have to make sure now that we file a waiver. That's called an exclusive office. What's it called? Exclusive office listing or something? I'm going blank. I didn't drink my coffee yet, but it's in our listing folder. And let's look at it because we want to make sure we do this right one. Let me show you the right one. And it is called, let's get it, listing Stellar Office Exclusive, this one. This is the one, the office exclusive. You want to do this one. And the reason you do is because when you sell it, we can now claim both sides in the MLS. We can say we're the list side and the buy side. If you don't do this, you'll only get the buy side. You won't get credit for the list side. Doesn't mean you can't sell it, but who doesn't want the MLS credit? Everybody in this room wants that MLS credit. If you don't, there's something wrong with you, leave my team immediately. No, I'm just kidding. So that's why it's office exclusive. Now,
Carrie,
yes,
couldn't you use that for private placement?
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if you really don't think you're going to sell it, do you need to file the office exclusive?
Well, I
Sure.
guess I'm coming from the listing side,
That's what I'm saying.
because if you don't put a date on the listing contract, is it really a listing contract?
No. Follow me here. The thing is, listing beginning date. If you put, let's say you take a private placement today, but you really don't plan to have this in the MLS until August, and you filed this today, MLS is going to show this as today. So let's say by the time you get into August, I don't think we could put beginning date as August. If we don't file this today, when we put it in the MLS, it's going to be first day August. That's why I don't like to file these until I need them. But
But-
now let's say it's July 4th and you think you've sold it or gonna sell it. We're gonna file this sucker July 4th. And that way we can get credit for both sides. So now it'll say July 4th, right? So that's fine. But the point is, if I file this too early, it's gonna show days on market early. That's why I don't like to do it.
I guess my question is more on the listing agreement itself.
No, the
These-
listing agreement, you're gonna post date it because the language, let me show you. Let's go back to our language. You're here gonna put August 6th, and you're gonna do 6 months from August 6th here. But here, everybody's gonna sign and date it as of today, which is June, I don't know, 16th, 17th, whatever today is. But this says, seller and broker hereby acknowledge and agree, all terms, covenants, and conditions contained in this shall be and remain in full force and effect as of the date the listing agreement is fully executed. It's
Okay.
executed today.
So
June.
that adds and say it starts today.
Exactly. So
Okay.
we have a fully executed listing agreement as long as everybody signed in, it's delivered today, right? We have an agreement as of today, but let's say you put this in the MLS as of August 3rd. Now the date in the MLS will be August 3rd, not today. But if we do a listing waiver, that could mess up our days on market.
Is that like the
I don't know.
cumulative thing on Reddit?
Yeah,
That's-
not the active, but the
Yeah.
cumulative. Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure because they keep changing these things. So I don't know. That's why the way they change these things all the time, I just don't want to deal with it. So that's why I just don't like to do the waiver. Cause just like they didn't do it, now they are doing it, and then the seller gets mad, but you said they didn't do it, but they didn't do it then, but now they're doing it now. So I don't like to explain why MLS changes their mind. Why do they change their mind? I don't know, but they do it all the time. And I know because I'm the broker advisory council and I can tell you these rules change all the time. So,
Carrie, I have a question. What,
yes,
typically I do kind of a wet signing when I'm in with my clients. I don't necessarily do it digitally.
that's fine.
If I'm going to deliver it, would it be coming home and scanning it and sending it by email or just sending them texting them a picture of it, like while I'm there with them?
No, I wouldn't do that. I would
Just-
just scan it and send it from like .loop. You want to have a digital copy that you send it.
Okay, and if you send it digitally and you've signed it and then they sign it, is it considered delivered? Do they already like have a copy of it once they sign it digitally?
Yeah.
Or do you have
So
to
if you've
resend
signed it
to
and you
them?
send it to them and they digitally sign it and ask, do
Yeah.
they want to download it? So they have a copy now.
Okay, so that's considered delivered then,
Yep.
once they
Yeah.
sign it digitally through .loop. Okay,
As long as you signed it first. Mhm.
okay,
Right, and now they have an email. That's why, like, if you've all wet signed it there, scan it into .loop and send it from .loop. Now you have a digital thing that says they've
Okay.
received it that day.
okay,
There's a couple reasons, but mostly it's for FREC. When we get audited, we could say, yep, we had it. We know it was delivered this date in case that ever came
Okay.
up, right? That's really, or if, God forbid, a lawsuit or hate to say that, but it does happen, guys. Another thing I want to bring up, or see how it talks about IDX, and you know, you can choose whether or not you want this to go on an IDX website. We have to have it go on all IDX websites, right? We do not need to have an automatic valuation. That's the ADM, just so you know. We don't need that. That's the Zillow Zestimate. We do not need to have people tell us if they have give us a market value. That's these things. We do not need to have those things. That could be yes or no. So if you want to check it or not, it doesn't matter. But we do need to have it feed to the internet and we need it to go to all IDX. That's the only things we do need. Zillow used to be a third-party vendor that we could select or not select. Back last year before, I don't remember, they became a brokerage. That was their plan all along. Evil. And maybe 3 years ago now, I don't even remember. So they are now an IDX feed, just like Coldwell Banker, just like Redfin, they are an IDX feed. So we cannot turn them on and turn them off. They either, everybody gets it or they don't. But if they feed wrong, oh my God, imagine that Zillow feeding wrong happens all the time. We have no control over that. We cannot turn them on, turn them off, call them. They don't care. It's an IDX. It'd be like us calling Coldwell Banker. They don't care, right? So you, as the premier agent or not premier agent or whatever, have much better luck calling Zillow about your listing than Premier Sotheby's does. That's brokerage to brokerage. They don't care about us. But because they would rather sell you personally something, you will have much better luck trying to get them to fix something on your personal listing. You guys understand what I'm saying here? So if you ever have issues with Zillow, we have hardly any luck getting them to do anything ever since they moved to an IDX feed.
Are they not liable for the information they're providing there? I mean, as a broker, at least.
So
Now that it's not a website, there's no.
I have two landlords that didn't sell,
Uh-huh.
but Zillow keeps putting it back active on my.
I'm sure they do. Uh-huh.
It doesn't, but then it goes away again, and then it's not in the history.
You
But
gotta call
somehow
Zillow. They're so annoying. They're the worst.
I don't have the listing anymore, that's so I can call Zillow.
Well, so if you cared, you could call Zillow. But when we call them, they don't care. We have tried on multiple listings and they just give us the runaround. They don't care because they're not providing us anything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're not a third party provider to us anymore. If they were a third-party provider, it'd be different, but they're an IDXB, they're a brokerage. So, yeah, but they can blame it on IDXP and blah, 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 blah. That's what they do. But you as an individual will have better luck because they want to sell you something. Mhm. So anyway, that's the thing with that. I just wanted to bring that to you. Okay, now,
So if it's a private listing, then are we saying that they're not going to publicly market it, like BI?
okay, so here you go. If you're gonna say the seller does not authorize broker to publicly display on MLS, if you check that, then you're gonna have to write a new listing agreement or change that when you do go on there. So
Okay.
I would not suggest this because you post dated it.
Okay,
You see what I'm saying? So if
Yep.
you're planning to go on the MLS in August, you post dated to August and you say, we don't have to check this because we post dated it to August when we plan to be on the MLS. That is the other point of post dating it. And you can write under additional terms, we will be in private placement until August, whatever, right? You can write that into additional terms because that's the whole point of post dating it. Does that make sense? And then you don't have to check this because you're not going to be on the MLS at the beginning date. Make sense? Otherwise, you're going to have to go back and do a new one or change that. Now, you do not have to initial these if you didn't check this. These initials are only if you're not going to be on the MLS. Now, if you initial these and you didn't check that, does it do anything? No, because it happens all the time. It seems like those are automatically set to initial. So it doesn't really matter, but just so you know, these initials are only required if you check that box. It's like saying, yes, 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 we don't want it on the market. Does everybody agree with that? Everybody understand it? That's always done wrong. Okay, the lockbox. If you use a lockbox, make sure you're checking this because this is a huge CYA for us. It gives us a huge indemnification. It releases us from anything happening to their property while they use the lockbox. Withhold all verbal offers. Please always withhold all verbal offers. Nothing good comes from a verbal offer. Nothing.
so we check that.
Always check that. Nothing good comes from a verbal offer. And I would say do not check this. Withhold all verbal offer, or withhold all offers once the sale. Now this one, I always ask you, are you accepting backup offers? I don't know. Yes, no. This is where you know. Did you check this or you didn't? Because if you didn't check this, that means you're accepting backup offers. If you checked it, means you're not accepting backup offers. In the MLS data entry form, you have to say whether or not you're accepting backup offers. My team that puts this in does not go through this contract. They go through your data entry form. So if you checked on the data entry form, accepting backup forms, but then you check this, that's a conflict. So realistically, your seller didn't agree to that. That could be a big problem. Right? You have to understand what you actually put in this contract. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a conflict here. So always allow your seller the opportunity to back up contracts, unless they're totally that kind of person that, please, dear God, once we get a contract, I really think we're good. We all know those. I mean, unless it's that one, okay, fine. But 9 out of 10 times, it's always better to allow them to have a backup contract. We know that. So don't check this. Why would you withhold offers? But if you're allowing backup contracts, you have to show the property. Don't forget that. That means you have to tell them here in the listing appointment, once we get the contract, we're still going to have showings if we have any backup offers, and that's to your benefit. You know, it's not like, oh, thank God, we got a contract, we never have to do a showing again. No, we still hope for showings because we want to have backup offers. Make sure you have those conversations. I find that people don't, and that's when it gets not so bueno.
Carrie, if they decide that if we've not checked this,
Yeah.
and then they decide that offer is great, we're done, I don't want any more backup offers, would we do a modification to this listing agreement to now check that box?
Or you could go in here, check the box and have everybody initial it. There's very few times I really ever want you to touch the modification to listing agreement. There's too many things on there I don't want them to look at,
Okay,
like
All right.
modifying the commission. Please, dear God, don't show them and make them think that they can do that because they can't. Okay. So that's
All right.
why I really don't like them to look at that form.
okay,
And also so you guys know, listing modification should be done by me, not by you guys. Okay, and I do not let anybody but me withdraw conditionally. And frankly, I really never withdraw conditionally, ever. So don't come to me and say we're withdrawing conditionally. Or don't even come to me and say we're withdrawing unconditionally, because I'm just gonna laugh at you, because we don't do that. Because there's nowhere in the contract that says withdraw conditionally, unconditionally. And there's definitely nothing that says cancellation, by the way. Anybody on this call thinks that we cancel? Because that's really funny. There is no cancellation. I'm a no cancellation policy. We don't cancel. Withdraw unconditional is what it says in the contract, which means we let you pay us and then we don't market your home and you can't do anything with it until the end of this period. Who wants to do that, guys? It's a stupid thing to do. We could TOM it. Do you want to do that? I mean, it's not a good thing. It's really not. Or you could pay us your full commission and then we'll let you out. Does anybody want to do that? Listen, it's not a good thing, but I am a stickler with that to help you. Now, if there's really a situation, can I work with you? Yes, more than likely. If that ever happens, I probably will I wouldn't terminate, but I would expire it early is probably what I would do. But we will talk about that, you and I, one-on-one. We'll talk about a solution. I'm never going to keep somebody that is a nice person that has a real reason in a contract, but you and I will talk through that. But I don't want it to look like in the system that we withdraw conditionally. I don't like that. I don't want people to think that they have a chance to get out of these contracts. No, because I like people to look back in the system and see, oh crap, she really doesn't withdraw. No, I don't. Yeah, I want it to look like that. Look through all my offices, go right ahead. How many times do I withdraw? Yeah, it's not looking good for you. I want it to look like that for sure. So I'm very, very much hard on that. But for a good reason, to help you. And that's the other point, guys. I'm happy to help you with your sellers anyway, but I cannot be nice and mean at the same time. I mean, I can be, but it's really weird. And then they think I'm bipolar. So I either have to come in nice or I have to come in mean, but you have to decide which one you want me to be. Okay. All right. So that's good. You understand that one. Okay. This one's cooperating with us. This one, guys, is about seller's disclosure. So, you know, and this is super important. The seller's disclosure by the state of Florida, it is a law. The seller must disclose any known facts, material facts, local government, building codes violations, unobservable defects that can affect the value of the property. Negatively, not positively, right? Negatively affect the value of a property. Let me ask you, does solar panels, well, maybe it does, but do solar panels negatively affect the value of a property? But they should positively, but they really don't, right? So the thing is though, there's not enough room here to put the things that like, did you have a leak, right? That negatively could affect. Do you have critters in your attic that could negatively affect your? So that's why we have the seller's disclosure. Do they actually have to fill in that particular form? That's not the legal requirement. The legal requirement is that they have to put in writing anything that could negatively affect the value. Right? We want it on the seller's disclosure because it's a great form that helps them jog their memory about anything bad. But that form is not the legally required document. There is really no legally required document. It's just that they have to put it in writing. Just so you know. This little line here, always not enough room, right? That's why we have come up. We didn't come up, the attorneys came up with that form to help jog their memory. But again, it's for things that would negatively impact the value of the property. Okay, that's what it's for. Here's the commission stuff, guys. Now, this is what's going to change. They're definitely going to add that it's negotiable. And here it doesn't say really what it's for, right? So I'm gonna wonder if it's gonna break it down for the listing side, or I think this is probably what's gonna change. But we'll see. Because here it's just the total and here is for the Co-Brook. This is probably what's gonna come out. They'll probably just take it completely out, is my guess.
On the, what about a sinkhole?
Sinkholes, what a mess.
Do we have, that's not our property description, is it?
Yes,
Yeah, I know we have the sinkhole addendum. I sold a house that was next.
it's on the seller's disclosure.
I sold a house next door to a sinkhole, the house was destroyed.
That negatively affects the value of the property. You definitely need to disclose that. Oh my God. Those are really hard to sell.
Like this.
So
You
the
can
county
slide
filled
into
it
the
with,
kitchen and
concrete and everything, but I have that sinkhole addendum.
So let's just talk about this. I know we're over, but I want to talk about this really quickly, commission. Because I'm sure you guys are all, how many of you have been having interesting conversations with sellers regarding commission so far? Anybody have some interesting ones? Yeah. Have you been breaking it up and saying, this is what we charge for our wonderful marketing? Has that been working for you? And then asking them and showing them what everybody in the community has been putting their commissions at and asking them how much would they like to do it at? Have you been doing it that way? Has that worked?
Yeah, well, I encouraged them to still offer 3 to the buyer's side, and I took 2.5 to. which-
Okay,
Because I think it was better than going all the way to 5.
yeah,
But I
heck yeah.
didn't wanna, I encouraged them because they're out of state and their agent in South Carolina told them to ask me about a discounted commission. on it.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah, that's all I'll do. What did you do, Ariana?
I showed her the benefits of having the buyers coming in, and I explained to her, I said, you can choose to skip paying a buyer's agent. I said, however, no one is going to show you. You're going to have very few people come in, and the people that come in are going to want to discount further.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and I told her, I said, in my opinion, it's gonna end up costing you
And what did she offer? Come in at?
6%.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay,
Hey, Carrie,
yes.
in Propel Smart Place, they actually have a handout now that explains why we would want to offer a buyer's agency commission. It's
Yeah.
actually really nice.
Yeah, I know, we worked on that. You're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for management. We're gonna have more stuff that we're coming out with as well. But I'm just wondering if everybody's been using this and anybody else have seen any other, how's it been working for anybody? Has anybody had any other hiccups that they've come through? What I'm hearing and what we'll see is, will this just completely come out of this listing agreement? So I've heard 2 things. I've heard one that they said they're gonna completely take it out. I've heard another that they may just put instead, buyer's compensation. I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see what's gonna happen here. I don't know if it will completely come out. Will it be replaced by buyer's commission? I'm not compensation. I'm not sure. But what I'm hearing is that they want to remove the language of co-broke compensation out of the listing agreement.
My biggest problem with that is the buyer coming in, like, one of my buyers at Hosser, she said, I'm gonna represent myself and I'm gonna buy after August. I'm like, okay, go ahead. She says no idea what she's doing. But, is me representing a listing, a buyer coming, saying I'm gonna represent myself, and then not knowing what they're doing. And of course, I'm not gonna help them because I'm not being compensated, but at the same time, am I representing my seller well if I'm not helping the deal?
So let me ask you, if she's representing herself, how is she doing a contract?
A lot of them are just gonna, title company will do it, get a lawyer to do it, something like that, like.
Well, if there's a lawyer, then you're really dealing with a lawyer. See, then we become a lawyer state. Well, the point is that she's really not representing herself, then it's becoming a lawyer state. But she's gonna pay more being represented by a lawyer. then she would have paid if
But
she
they're
paid.
not
advance.
being represented by a lawyer, just having a lawyer look over the contract to see everything's fine.
No, but the lawyer's gonna have to charge them to write the contract. How much do you think a lawyer's gonna charge? Hey, Teresa, what would your husband charge to write up a contract?
$350 now.
Right,
Plus, what about negotiation? And then you have to
Exactly.
read the contract.
Yeah.
How many times?
exactly. Let me
I don't
tell you,
think
I
that they're
come
gonna
from
write
New
the
York,
contract. I think
we're
they're
a
just gonna
contract
look
state.
over.
but where are they gonna get the contract from?
The internet?
the
No.
internet there.
But if you say we're only accepting a Florida Bar Association contract,
I know people that do this now, they just ask the listing agent, so contract and then they fill it out.
but why would the listing agent give a contract? See, I wouldn't do that. Why would you give a contract? Now you're liable. You just gave a contract. You're liable for that.
Get them
Another
somewhere.
great selling point too.
Mhm. Yeah, you're liable if you just gave them a contract.
I'm sorry, I don't feel I'm liable for that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't represent you.
Exactly. So these are things we need to talk about. This is all the unknowns, which we'll find out, guys. But remember, you don't give away your contracts that are written by the Florida Bar Association. You want to be liable for that? I wouldn't do it. Here's the part about conditional termination, guys. If the seller asks, so you know, if we ever were to do it, the seller must sign a withdrawal agreement and reimburse the broker for all direct expenses incurred in marketing the property. That's $1,500. That's our setup fee. Like if you were going to list your own personal property, we charge you the $1,500 setup fee. That's what that is. Plus whatever you write in here, just so you know. Okay. So if you want to make sure they understand the 1,500, you could write 1,500 plus whatever you want for your photos and your videos or not. That's up to you. You don't have to write it in. You can just hope it never happens. I have no problem explaining to them. Hopefully we never get there. But just so you know, that's what that is, okay?
Can you explain it one more time, Carrie? I'm sorry.
Sure. Under conditional termination, which you know I don't like to do anyway, it says if I agree to conditionally terminate, which probably won't happen anyway. But if I were to agree to it, they have to pay the broker all the direct expenses incurred in marketing our property. Now, it's usually much more than the 1,500, but all I ever charge is the $1,500 fee that it costs for Sotheby's to set up the account. Just like if you were going to sell your personal property, you have to pay the same setup fee, which is $1,500 to get it set up and all the July, the Nikai, all the things that we do. That's $1,500 to get that set up. That's why as you selling your own personal property, that's all you have to pay as a marketing fee. It's the $1,500. That's what we charge them. Could I charge them more? Sure, because it costs us a lot more, but I don't ever charge them more than that. That's all I charge them is the $1,500. I should charge them more, but
Is that, do we write that in? then?
you don't have to because it says that. And then you can pay a cancellation fee. The cancellation fee is usually whatever you want to get back for your photos, your videos, the stuff that you want to get back.
Should that eventually rise with the price of the home?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a $5 million property, how much are you spending? Now, see, I should get much more than $1,500 because I'm going to put a lot more into that. But usually we don't go after that. I mean, again, we're not trying to, rake the seller over the coals. But could I? Sure. I could just get from marketing what we really are spending, and it's going to be ugly, guys. But we don't normally do that. But also, we don't normally have to deal with conditional termination either. Okay.
So Carrie, if it is on line 144, would we write 1,500 plus, let's say 700 for what my expenses would have been?
You could. I do have agents that do that, so they don't have to explain it. You're welcome to do that. I have other agents who don't. It's totally your call, Sue, whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, again, we don't often get to conditional termination. That's a very rare thing that it happens where somebody gets there. But if you feel you want to, you're more than welcome to.
So
I
it would
just
be the
want
total.
you to know. It would be the
It
total.
would be
Well, if you
total.
want to get $1,000 and then you would too, 2,500.
Okay.
Follow me?
Yep.
Okie dokie. So under additional terms here, this is where, for example, again, I don't know what it's going to look like, but if they took out the cooperation, if you wanted to ask the seller, are you willing to cooperate? We probably could put some stuff here. I don't know. We'll see what Premier Sotheby's ends up. We'll have our own forms. We'll have our own things. So don't worry. we are planning our own lots of things for this, so don't worry about that. But I just wanted to go over some important things in this contract, some things to clarify, some things that I think definitely will be changes that we can see going forward, just to prepare you ahead. Any questions? I hope you guys got some stuff from today.
That verbiage at the end, it pops up automatically.
Automatically, I put it in every contract. Does anybody else have any questions?
Carrie, the date is gonna be what, August 17th? Was that the actual
I
date
think
that
it's
they
the
came?
15th, but
Oh.
well, no, it's a moving target to be true, Marima. Honestly, it's just like they keep changing the dang thing. But right now, I think it's
Yeah.
the 15th. Yeah, but we have feverishly working on part of several task forces on my side. We're working on a lot of stuff for you guys, so don't worry, we'll have awesome things for you. And as soon as Florida Realtors puts out that, again, remember, I'm one of the educators for Florida Realtors, so I should have the documents first. Maybe. So we'll see. I'm going to be at Aura actually tomorrow. I am teaching a class working with the international buyer. Ooh la la, for their international day. So hopefully I will get some more information there. I was at the board of directors thing on Friday. It was quiet. Mom's the word. So nobody had anything to say there. But hopefully this week, I mean, they said the middle of June. We're there. So hopefully we'll have some documents released this week, but as soon as I have them, I'll let you guys know. And, but again, I think the changes in the listing agreement will be pretty minor. I think, the buyer broker agreement again will mirror more of what we saw in the listing agreement, and we'll have more teeth. Probably we'll have the arbitration section. I think that's what they've been talking about, because right now it didn't have that. And I think that there will be 3 other things that will help us negotiate our compensation, which will be great, and how to submit it to the other side. So that'll be good. So it's going to be a lot of stuff that will help us to to give it clarity and make it simple. So, well, you guys have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining.
Thanks.